Welcome back, guys. I'm Captain Foley.
And I'm Cornell Cockins, and today we have another special guest joining us.
So we have the incredible Doug Drexler back with us today, and today we will be discussing his time and all his work done on Star Trek Continues, the incredible continuing adventures of the TOS crew, starring Vic Mignogna, Todd Haberkorn, Chris Doohan, and many more. Welcome back to your home away from home, Doug, with your godlike finger.
Hi, everybody. I missed you.
We missed you too, Doug.
And the Star Trek Continues is an always enjoyable and faithful reproduction of the look and feel of TOS, and I'm happy to include both Vic and Todd as track actors have actually met. So Doug, tell us about how you became first involved with Star Trek Continues. Do you remember what year, where you were, and Vic Mignogna specifically? What was the pitch, and what really drew you into this new fan film sensation?
Well, the thing is, I'm always being approached by people to help with their fan films all the time. And frankly, I had gotten to a point where I decided I didn't want to do any more, little indie films or Star Trek fan films. And I had gotten really badly burned on a project called Space Command, which we don't want to go into that. But it was not a happy experience for me, and I felt like I was taken advantage of a little bit. And I said, that's it. I've had it. And I wasn't going to be involved anymore. But Vic contacted me and wanted me to do visual effects. And I said, I'm really not. I'm busy as it is, and I've had bad experiences, and I think I'm pretty much done with that. And Vic, even though, Vic and I hit it off pretty good. I mean, we're Star Trek fans, so it was always fun to talk, and he always kept that at the forefront to try to talk me into, doing the visual effects for it. And I was pretty steadfast about not doing it, and then he brought in a rough cut to my house of the one with Mike Forrest coming back as Apollo, and it just within a few minutes, just everything about it, the cinematography, the lighting, the pacing, everything about it was, I felt like I was watching an original series episode. But I also have to say that in a thing that Vic had recorded of me talking about Star Trek Continues for their site, I said that. I said that it was the most like the original series. I was blown away by that, and because of that, I wanted to be involved with it. I felt like I was 13 years old again watching it. It really was the acting and Vic and Vic is quite a brilliant guy. He really knows how to do a TV show. And obviously you look at that and you see that I know that they've got 7 episodes in the can. 6 is being released this weekend, I think. Mm-hmm. And to do that in the amount of time, it's only been a couple of years. That's like an amazing schedule. I don't know of any other fan film that has given the fans so much for, people do donate. They do crowdfunding, which is kind of controversial right now. With Star Trek Continues, they get back way more than anything they put in. To have that many episodes turned out, it really is remarkable. I'm blown away by it, and I'm very proud. I'm as proud to be on Star Trek Continues as anything I've been on ever. And that's saying quite a lot, because it is it's not just an amazing, it's just so on the money. It just tastes like it, everything about it. It doesn't try to fix the old show. It really seeks to, and I do it in visual effects as well, is to recreate the old show as far as look and aesthetics, and here and there, we'll put a candy coating on it here and there. I have a shot in 6 that is a little different than what they might have done on the show, but I convinced Vic that they could have done it if they really tried.
So you're saying that really the pitch was, a lot of people say the proof in the pudding is in the eating. They showed you the episode, they showed you the quality, and then you signed on. They didn't even have to sell it.
Everybody tells you it's going to be the greatest thing. Of course, everyone believes in their own projects, but I didn't want the aggravation that comes with this type of thing. I mean, look, when you're working on same aggravation when you work on a TV show or a movie, same aggravation, except they're paying you. I do not take any money for anything that I do that's fan oriented. I never took a dime for any of the New Voyages stuff. I never took a dime for Star Trek Continues. I do it because I love it. It's a lot of fun, So the thing is that, I was like, I'm getting an awful lot of aggravation and pain in the ass stuff happening, and I'm not even getting paid. There's nothing to make up for the hell of it. Mm-hmm. And it's not like I'm hungry or anything as far as getting into Hollywood, 34 years now. I just looked at the calendar and I said, holy crap, I've been in the business for 34 years.
So can you tell us what you like best about Star Trek Continues? Is it like something specific? I know it's the overall look and the product, but is there anything that really draws you in besides that?
Well, it's really everything put together. All of the fan films have a thing here and there that's kind of neat going on. Wow, that's really cool. But Star Trek Continues through, there's a thread that runs through everything on the show. There's a consistency in quality. Here's one thing I want to tell you about. I did this, I told you I did this thing for Vic where I talk about how it's the most like the original series and blah, 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 and he used it online. I'm not insulting anyone by saying that I think Star Trek, it's just what appeals to me. It's my opinion. And I love everything everyone's doing. I'm really so amazed by all of it. But for me, what I really wanted when Star Trek was canceled at the end of the third season, ever since I was a kid, was to get that show back. Well, we got everything but that back, except for an episode of Deep Space Nine and when we did Enterprise. But we got all kinds of new Star Trek, and I'm not complaining about any of it. I think it's all great. With Star Trek, there's lots of room for all kinds of different approaches. It's science fiction after all. It's all about experimentation. And of course, the other thing is that I told Vic, I said, as long as the shows aren't effects driven, that they use effects pretty much about as much as they do on the original series where they didn't have much money. The ship was usually used to get from point A or point B with an interesting effect shot here and there. It was not effects driven, and it was not about flashy effects.
No barrel rolls.
We're not doing big space. Well, there was no way I was ever going to do that because I wanted it to be a recreation of the way they shot the old series.
So you said 6 episodes with a 7th one in production. How many visual effects shots do you think that actually is then, all combined? I believe you said at one point to us earlier that you've recommended they reuse stock shots because now there's a few built up. So how many shots have you actually done at this point, do you think?
Yeah, I've never counted them up, but I think that there must be at least 20 shots an episode. You're right. I've told Vic that one of the things about the original series is by using effect shots over again, establishing shots over and repeating them. It's like hearing a favorite song over and over and over. That's why you have a title sequence with music. You anticipate, it makes you feel at home. You get a warm, fuzzy feeling when you see that shot. When we were on Battlestar Galactica, we never used a stock shot. Not once, not ever. That was one of the rules because they used to use stock shots on Star Trek all the time. So we said, no stock shots. Every shot is a new shot unless we're really jammed against the wall.
Wow.
But I always felt that the use of stock shots, the reuse of musical cues, these are things that it almost puts you into kind of a hypnotic state. I think it's a part of the flavor of the show. So we have a stock of shots, and we've been reusing shots here and there. I love it. I think it's really cool. It feels just like the original show when it has a stock shot like that.
And now the big question, which we're waiting to ask you. So, is there anything special you do, and we know there is, that makes these CG shots make it feel like a true 1960s, maybe feel like a miniature? What do you, Doug? What do you do? And go.
Well, I approach shooting the original series Enterprise probably different than anybody else does. And the one thing is that I don't shoot it like a spaceship in space. I shoot it as if it's an 11-foot model. My I want it to look like a model. I want it to look like the way it looked on the show, which is like an 11-foot. It has its own distinctive look because it is 11 feet and because it is lit on stage, and because the other thing is one of the things that people like to do, especially people first starting out in visual effects, and I saw it when I was on Face Off too, as a judge, is that when you're starting out, you want to show off. You want to show what you could do. You want to kick ass and show how you improve things or made things better. There's none of that. I don't do any of that on Star Trek Continues. It's all about how they might have done it if they were shooting it back then, and that is, I do not do any impossible CG camera shots. Every shot that I do on Star Trek Continues, I weigh it out. Could they have done this on stage? The camera is on there's a grip pushing the camera on a trolley. They may be able to scissor jack up and down and do a little pan tilt and stuff like that. There was a motor where they could actually turn the Enterprise, but having shots where you're going through the struts of the ship or you're swinging around and seeing it in ways you never saw before, I don't do any of that. It doesn't feel like the show. To me, it pulls you out of that era. You have to duplicate that era of shooting for it to look real. Plus, of course, the other thing is that when they shot the original series, shots were very expensive, and so every shot was lit with plenty of ambient light. There was light all the way around, not a lot of shadows, and that's because Bob Justman wanted to be able to use those shots in any situation. Today, with the computer, it's so easy to change the light and render out some new shots, but they wouldn't have done that in the 60s. So I do the shots as if they need to plug in other places later on. I shoot them as if they're stock shots. Here and there, if we have, like, there's a mood at the very end of the next Star Trek Continues where you need softer shadows and a little more dramatic lighting, and I do it there. I do it if the story warrants it, and the story warranted it there. It's possible that Bob Justman would have said, this is a sensitive moment, and I want to get some shots of the Enterprise little different than what we usually have. So I treat it that way. When everyone builds a starship, they look at the Enterprise and they go, well, it says right here it's 947 feet long. You go in the computer program, zip, 947 feet long. That's what it is. Except the Enterprise was never 947 feet long. It was a little over 11 feet. So what I did was that my model is 11 feet long. It's not a 1,000-foot starship. If you're shooting with a 1,000-foot ship, it's not going to look the way it did on the show. And how do I know that? I know that because I was on the TNG remasters for one season. And thankfully, Paramount kept everything. I mean, they found almost every shot that was being up-resed or recomposited. But we were prepared to do a CG shot of the Enterprise if one didn't turn up. And thankfully, I don't know that there were any CG shots, maybe one, when I was there. But the interesting thing was that I had a frame grab from the show on my computer screen, and I brought the Enterprise D in, and I went to line it up the way it was in the show. And I remember thinking, gee, I'll bet you Gary did this shot. I'm going to give him a call. I called Gary up, and I said, Gary, what lens did you use when you shot the Enterprise D? And he told me. So I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I have the lens information and everything from the original show, from Gary, who shot it. So I go in the computer and I put in the lens, and nothing I do will line up the Enterprise D. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? It's not even close, right? And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I said, Gary was shooting like a 4.5-foot model. wasn't shooting no 2,000-foot long starship. As soon as I reduced the size of the Enterprise D, everything snapped right into place. I'm like, oh, wow. And one of the things about the original series that I love is it has a wonderful, the perspective on the ship. I mean, the lens distortion is very distinctive. When the Enterprise comes around the planet, the way those, nacelles go, way off, or when the camera, when the ship sweeps by you, the way the ship distorts. Until I did that, I wasn't able to get that look. And as soon as I did that, it like snapped into place to look like the original series. Now, when you combine that with lens and the light and the technical approach to the way it's shot, not shooting it the way you would shoot it now, but shooting it, you had a big heavy camera with a dolly that needed to be pushed, it just all of a sudden it was Star Trek. Plus, I also make sure that I duplicate angles that they had on the show. Even if I'm doing an entirely new shot, what I'll do is I'll start on an angle we're all familiar with. For instance, if I've got a shot approaching the Enterprise, it's a classic, we all know it. But the camera continues to move. There's more to the shot than we've ever seen before, and that makes people go, whoa, what's going on? And I've had people actually tell me that. They said, oh, there's that fantastic shot I love, and whoa, now I'm seeing it more of it than I ever saw before. I know that for fans and myself especially is when we find new footage from the show or new publicity shots, it's like, wow, this is like new old stuff, So it's like when you see a shot that's a duplication of a shot we know and love, and it takes you another 70 frames or 40, even if it's only like 40 frames, it's like, whoa, it's kind of startling.
As a CG artist, it's always about making it look realistic, and I sort of like for Voyager and Enterprise, like much darker, much more point lights and things, and such a bright Enterprise. Most of the time people would think, if you just took abstract another CG artist, they'd think, oh, that's very bright, doesn't make sense. But you look at this footage and it's just like, that works, that's right. Because you've got the scale, there's something about it. It pulled together. It's too bright, but it looks like the Enterprise. It's crazy.
That's the way it looked. I mean, it's also the fact that this is not real life. It's not real. It's more of like when an artist does paintings in a graphic novel. There's a sort of hyper reality that comes with that universe that the story takes place in. In the universe of TOS, that's the way starships look. I'm always looking for ways to justify things. I'm thinking, well, maybe the ship, maybe it's slightly luminous for a few days after it comes out of warp, and it would be, and it would be. I mean, I could turn on luminosity onto surfaces on models in CG. Why not? That would explain it. Why the ships have that distinctly bright. Personally, I always thought the NX was shot way too dark. It looked dark and gray and dingy. If I had been shooting it, plus also I wanted the surface to be brighter and whiter than what they did, and they went more towards a gunmetal, which I didn't like that. I think that Enterprises should look bright and heroic. It's the white knight. I believe if you look at early stock shots from TNG, they're lit the way the original series Enterprise was. Bob Justman was there. And they didn't have a lot of money, and they were trying to stretch their dollars. So I think a lot of shots probably were lit with a lot of ambient light, so they could use them over again. CG made it possible to do lots of specialty shots, but before CG came along, it was very expensive. Go get the model, get the Teamsters with a truck, pick it up, bring it in. A couple of coffee breaks later, they get to the image G, and the thing gets put on the stand, and now they got to set up the lights and program the motion control. With a computer, you could set up a shot in a couple of hours and actually have a render. That's movie and television production couldn't possibly resist that. Besides, I have to say that as much as I like physical models, some of the CG stuff I see is so wonderful. And then I'll see an old movie where it's all physical models, and it's getting kind of creaky, at this point. I mean, I saw Ghostbusters couple of weeks ago, and the Terror Dogs, I could see the mat lines around them, and they're sliding
mhm.
all over the plate, and
It always surprised me going back to I have the Blu-rays of the motion picture, and you can see the black outlines, very distinct to the Enterprise. Like,
oh
oh,
yeah,
it's matted.
yeah.
That's less impressive.
Although the motion picture Enterprise really looks spectacular. It's really stunning.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a place for both, but I think that there's no way anything's going to compete with CG because number one, every single year it's going to get like 50 times better.
Yeah.
It's just going to keep getting better. There's not going to be any end to how real it's going to be.
And speaking of CGI and 3D models, have you created any new 3D models for the show? The Enterprise looks amazing. Is that one that you made? And what's been your favorite model to work on so far?
Well, the Enterprise that we use was originally, there's some interesting history. It was when they were doing the remasters, we were approached, Gary Hutzel, about possibly, and doing a budget for it. And I'm one of the experts on the Enterprise. Gary knows this. He knows I have tons of reference material. I know every square inch of it. And he says, take Pierre Drolet and supervise him building the model, which is what we did. And we did a couple of test shots, and it looked really good. Since then, I've entirely repainted it, and because I know more about the ship than I did at the time that thing was done. I have amazing reference that once we started the Smithsonian restoration of the surface of the hull, and I mean, if you take a look at that shot of the Enterprise where the camera goes through the hole punched into the primary hull, take a look at the surface. I mean, I've got those, the greens and the, so it's been reworked a lot, but it's such a simple model. The Enterprise is a very simple model. You just need the right information. There's no complex shapes on it except the bridge. The bridge is the only complex shape on the entire model. Most of it can be lathed, and it's not like the motion picture Enterprise where the hull is curvy and stuff like that. It's there. That one's a little more difficult. I know Gabe built one for us with Lou Ferrigno. The Orion ship was built by Gabe. Vic knew that I wanted to keep it as close to the original series. You don't just have lots of ships happening everywhere. As a matter of fact, we had a show where, I guess it was the Mirror Universe one, where alien ships from a distance are firing torpedoes at the Enterprise. And I did it just the way they did, just like a pulsing blob of light practically. Remember how they had Klingon ships that were just like glowy anvil-looking things that off in the distance?
Yeah.
That's because they didn't have money. So I'm sure I take the time to not take the time sometimes. We're not going to have a brand new ship for everything like we did on Enterprise and DS9 and stuff like that. We treat it like we don't have much of a budget. So except for a couple of places, we really didn't have, there really aren't any guest ships. We've got the shuttlecraft that we use from time to time. I didn't have time because of the show I was on, but there was a scene with the shuttle bay and a shuttlecraft in it. Mm-hmm. And we got it back, and not to be critical of the guys who did it, because they really did a fine job, but I just know it so much better than anyone else. And plus, I wanted every shot to look like a shot that they would have done, and I went back and rebuilt it, and I used my own shuttlecraft, which was much closer. I had amazing reference to the shuttle many years ago. It used to be in a industrial parking lot for years in Southern California, just rotting away. And a friend of mine went down and took lots of pictures. So I used my shuttle there. And boy, I look at that shot and I go, wow, that looks just like the original series. Looks just like it. Sometimes I'll have little, thumbnails of the pictures from Star Trek Continues on my desktop. Even if they're large thumbnails, I'm like, is that an actual shot, or is that, so I'm fooling myself.
Well, speaking of,
such a good thing, right?
Speaking of, out of all the scenes you have created for the show, what has been your favourite CG shot to work on, and why?
Well, I have to say that new shot where you start out in front of the ship and you keep going in and in and in, and you go in and you're inside the ship. I built all those, the interiors and the corridors and all that stuff for that shot. I had a lot of it already that I had built before.
It's pretty damn impressive.
That's really a fun shot, and I was really worried about it because Vic showed concern. They couldn't have done that. I don't think they could have done it, because he says, you're breaking your own rule to not do a shot that they couldn't do. And I said, Vic, I really think that it's true that the lens on the camera's kind of large to get it in there, but you might be able to, move the camera in and zoom in and even optically move in a little bit. And at that point, you just go on stage and you overturn stuff and put a couple of fire bars up and you move a camera through there. And there's a handoff as you go through the hole where it kind of blurs, where you don't know, and you go through a little bit of smoke, and now you'd be on the other set. They could do this if they had the time. I don't think
that's awesome. I love the thought process you put into that to convince him that it could have been done.
Yeah, he was like, but that kind of haunted me later, and I'm thinking, man, maybe I shouldn't have put that in there. Is that just going to stop the show dead? But it didn't, and it transitions well to what's her name running down the hallway, And I have to say, I mean, I love doing all the shots. They're all really fun to recreate. Try to get the gritty, I mean, I like I put not as much as they had, but I put a lot of grain on the ship, people tend to either not grain it or blur it. Like you got to blur the ship and you've got to grain it. I know that, like I was saying about people just starting out, they want to show what they've got. And I don't want to blur my ship. I want everyone to see it in all its beauty. And what's all this crawly, grainy shit? I'm not putting that on there. And then you sacrifice it looking like the real thing. Physical models are always slightly blurry, always a tiny bit. That's the way real life is. A sure computer shot is something that's perfectly in focus everywhere. There's no depth of field. Like, for instance, when I shoot the Enterprise, I treat it like an 11-foot model. So if I'm back behind the nacelle, looking towards the bridge, which is a shot that they did quite often, the nacelle is a little bit blurry near the camera and sharpens as you get towards the bridge. And that's just real life, Yeah.
So you've done some fantastic shots for the show. How long do they usually take to render per scene? And do you actually have a render farm, or you just do this all on your home PC?
Well, I've got 3 big computers that I can use, but so I don't really have a farm. You can now use render farms on the internet if you don't have a farm. But because of the aesthetic that we've chosen on Star Trek Continues, they're not big renders. Rendering the Enterprise, very fast render. I think the longest render I've ever had on the show, and where I've stretched things for episode 7, and I'm not going to say what it is, but because Vic, I'm sure, doesn't want me to, but it is a complex shot of, I'm not going to say what it is. That has taken me, it's like 100, 200 frames or something like that, and I've had to leave it overnight. But for Star Trek Continues, that's usually in an hour or less. I'll have the shot rendered.
It's like a pizza. It's half an hour, it's free, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. I like extra cheese on mine.
So, can you give us any teasers for upcoming CG shots-wise? Will we be seeing K7 again, a Scout, a Destroyer? Really expand the fleet, because that's something that we really should have seen in TOS if they had the budget. Are these things you want to see really up the level, but in such a small but meaningful way?
Well, the thing is this. Vic does not intend on doing Star Trek Continues forever. Yeah. He had a definite plan of how many episodes he was going to do, not just keep doing it year after year after year after year. I'm not sure exactly the number. It may be 12 episodes. And there is already an arc in place that will take us to the final show. And I'm not going to say a damn thing about it, except that it's really pretty cool, I got to say. I was like, wow, Vic, that's really some sharp thinking there, buddy. Whether we're going to be able to see all of that type of stuff and what's planned, I can't say. We will see some other starships, but that's about all I can say about that.
Anyway, guys, as always, that was a fun episode. Thanks again for joining us, Doug. It's always a pleasure to have you here, and we enjoy hearing all of your incredible stories. And we of course look forward to the next time we speak with you.
I love all you guys out there, and I just want to say thanks for everything. Thanks for all the fish, and exciting times ahead. Exciting times ahead, my friends.
And if you guys want to help to us continuing our mission to create more content like this, please visit our Patreon page and donate what you can on a monthly basis. Every little bit helps. Or go over to our Trekyards.com page, click the donate button, all that jazz for one-time donation. Until next time, though, guys, I am Connor Cookins.
And I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Doug Drexler.
Doug Drexler.
Doug Drexler.
So until next time, everybody, be safe, have fun, and keep on trekking.
Bye, guys.